access it. But we thank you guys so much for joining us this morning for the Mastermind call with the Dream Makers Network. So excited to connect with all of you this morning. For those of you who are on the call for the first time and connecting with us online, my name is Byron Deese, founder of the Dream Makers Network, CEO of Engage Wealth, and here today in Sanford, Florida, and on my way to Baltimore in a few minutes, in a few days. So, but we're just excited and thankful to have you guys participating with us on the Mastermind call with the Dream Makers Network, and just having these opportunities once a month. We come together on Saturday mornings, once a month, the first Saturday in the month, to really just focus on personal development. I mean, that is the core of what we do here. Over the years, we have, created, there were people we didn't know, 13 years ago when we started this network. And particularly this call, when we started this call, we didn't know a lot of these folks. And now we have close family friends who have come together through this network, particularly to identify folks who are like-minded in the spirit of personal development. And what does that mean when we talk about personal development? To have the willingness to go from where you are to where you want to be. Emphasis on the word willingness. There are so many examples where there are people who in their mind and even in their conversation, will say, I can't wait till I can do this, and I hope I get a chance to do that. But they're still not willing to actually pursue and be in the process of the lifestyle of personal development. It's not a thing, a thing that you just go and do and it's done, but it is a lifestyle that you just adopt, and you build into that lifestyle, praying and hoping, hoping and praying that work, those things that, those traits you've adopted, the mindset shift that you have adopted will be there, will add value to your work, add value to your plight, will add value to your day-to-day responsibilities, will add value when you encounter the enemy, will add value when you are providing guidance and support for your loved ones. It is beyond, and I'm just speaking personally right now, it's beyond important because if anybody who's willing to do God's work, anybody who's willing to be purpose driven, anybody who's willing to do that should just know that that's not what the enemy wants for you. The enemy wants you to do nothing, to say nothing, to sit back, to just let life happen and die, right? That's what, that is what the enemy wants you to do. And, when I say the enemy, I mean, the evil, principalities, the spirits, the, people who are being used by the enemy to affect and try to deter you and throw you off your message and, put you in a position where you change your mind about living a life of purpose. Sometimes these people are random. You have no clue who they are and why and how they got access to you. And then other times they're right close inside your own house, or could be some of your best friends. You never know what that means, and when these situations happen and how it's going to happen and who's going to be used to potentially bring you down in this particular moment. But I think it is so important when we look back to the origins and how we started this network and organizing for the purpose of personal development, and diving into, the Law of Success in 16 Lessons by Napoleon Hill, and unpacking a lot of the objectives that he and those chapters in that book, and particularly when he talked about the spirit of the mastermind. And the spirit of the mastermind is when two or three come together in the spirit of harmony, that the collective mind can allow you to access more than what you can do on your own. And that, the first time I heard it, it was just so ringing, because I'd heard a similar scripture throughout my life, where two or three come together, I am in the midst. Two or three people come together in my name, I am in the midst. And that was Jesus communicating that if you come together in my name, I am in the midst. And so these are universal laws that are made available to us to use, to utilize, to apply to our daily living and communication as we're talking to other folks who are trying to piece it together, And so I'm just thankful for all of you, thankful for this opportunity, thankful for this call, really to be intentional and cathartic in your process, to use this time to really unpack what it is that you're working on and why, what challenges you've run into, and the strategy, if you will, and the purpose behind the strategy to advance your situation. I think that at the core, that's what this call is all about: to utilize a mastermind, to utilize like-minded people who may not be in your circle, but today they are. Today, you have access to people who truly want to see you thrive, who truly want to see you go from where you are to where you want to be, and help provide some level of clarity for you in that process. And so I am truly thankful for that, and having this medium to come together and to do that. And for you guys for 13 years to have continued to come back and come back and come back and participate in this with us. And for all of you who are on for the first time, again, welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope to hear from you, and we thank you so much for taking time out of your morning, if you're here in the States, to participate with us. And if you see us later, please feel free to connect with us at our website, dreammakersnetwork.org. Just connect with us and try to stay locked in with the things that we've been doing in the community and just throughout this network. So thank you. All right. Well, like I said earlier, I am, there's just times when, I'm like, listen, I can't wait to this call because, life be lifing, if you will, like they say. And I think it's always important to, when we go through things and we overcome, right? When we go through things and overcome and have the opportunity to tell our stories, do it, right? And do it particularly, it's best when you can do it in a setting of folks who get it. A lot of times, we're eager to kind of try to create, a nice little team or a positive network, and not all folks are positive. It's like, how did this person get included in this, And it is important when we talk about what a mastermind is, why you put them together, what's the steps, right? And the first thing, especially if this is somebody who hasn't delved into personal development as just a study at all, or haven't been on any calls or anything like this, the first thing you say was, let me just put together either my friends or my family, people who I know love me, and put them in this group, and that's my people. And this is, I'm going to talk to them about these things. And I would tell you off the jump, that is not the best strategy. And it's so, whoa, Dees, why would you say that? These people love me, Why would you say I shouldn't put these folks in my network? The question really is, when you start putting together a personal development network, just a small group of folks who you can go to and identify and just talk about what you're working on, what challenges you've overcome or you're going through. This question is, who do you listen to? You listen to the people who have what you want. You listen to the people who have what you want. So it's either one or two things. You either have access to people who have done what you're trying to do, or they're in their own realm. They've done these types of things and have overcome and aren't bitter about it. I tried that before. I went through it, and let me tell you something. You shouldn't do it, because let me tell you what happened to me, right? And who knows what mindset they were in when they went through their challenge and that moment where they tried to overcome and really go into some detail to advance their situation. But you want to put yourself in a position, sometimes you can just meet people and you have a conversation. And, I'll tell you two things that I actually look for when I meet new people to see, is this like somebody I should definitely have a follow-up, with. If it's just non-business related, just pure, could this person potentially be my friend? Like that kind of thing, right? Because I'm not in the market for new friends. But every now and again, you meet somebody, and it's like, okay. And one is, how did the conversation even start? Like, how did I even meet this person? And that's important to talk about, because you can say, oh, well, I was at a networking event, or I was at church, or I was at an event, and like, how did y'all even come together? Like, that part is important. And the reason why is because there is a thing called the law of attraction. And when auras force themselves in alignment, and you find yourself in a situation where you are in a conversation. Some of the folks who are on this call right now, again, I didn't know these people before the call, but these unique things happen, and maybe a conversation was sparked. Dr. Dana and I met on an airplane, going to a place that I seldom go, and able to just truly, and weren't even supposed to be sitting next to each other, and we're able to dive into just a personal development conversation that was 12 years ago, possibly. And there's so much has come from relationships and engagements like that. But just being in a position to say, when you're having that conversation with that new person, number one, how do they make you feel? See, a lot of times we just overlook stuff. Society has us thinking so rigid about things. But we have to try to act as, I know we're not babies anymore, but we have to remember how babies grow, how they develop. Because how they develop is still a useful process for us, because we're still developing too. And how did it make you feel just having a conversation with somebody? What spirit, what energy were they giving you that made you feel, just comfortable enough to open up, to tell more of yourself than just hi and bye, or this is what I do, and that kind of thing. But to even go into some type of, substantive conversation. So that's number one. How does that person make me feel when I meet them? Number one. Number two is, who's doing all the talking? Is one person dominating the conversation? Or is there just a willing, fluid flow of conversation happening back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? And I know this sounds very elementary, but I think it's important for us to, have these type of conversations, especially as it relates to who are we, how do we engage with new people? Because, listen, if we are intentional, if we are committed to purpose-driven activities in life, you're going to find yourself in spaces of new people, and so what is your thought process? Like, do you have, a lot of people don't want to even be around new people because they're just like, I don't feel like talking to people. I don't really want to associate. Like, why they don't need to know me no way. Like, what I'm saying? Like all of these different things. But again, in this commitment to purpose-driven living, we have to be open to what is possible. So when you're having this conversation, how do you feel? Is it, are you finding yourself the only person talking and they may not be so interested and they're just kind of waiting for you to finish so they can say something that they want to say, or does this person legitimately sound like they are interested in what I'm talking about? And then when they talk to you, how do you feel about it? Is this something that lines up with an energy or with an objective, or maybe they've said things and you have a potential resource for them? Do you feel like you should communicate? Like, all of these things are popping up in my brain as I'm talking to somebody for the first time. And so that's kind of, I would say, the beginning of, one, how can we even embrace new people? But two, when we start looking at designing and building masterminds, it's our own little personal masterminds. It's going to come through a combination of people who are in your life, like you can go speak, touch, and feel. But I will tell you, and I'm just personally speaking, a lot of, my masterminds over the years have been with people who have never met me. And I've never met them. Some have even passed away before I even learned about them. But because they have documented their stories, whether it be through books or through online material and things like that, and I just try to go in and just digest as much of that information as possible, and even try to follow the clues. Like, a lot of times reading one book will lead me to another book. And you heard about something in the book and they talked about something that really lined up with what you're trying to do. And then you found yourself getting that book and then you dove into that, or you went online while you were reading and looked it up. And a whole new world just opened up. And just so it's amazing how quickly you can go from the seat that you're in your house to somewhere else, like just completely off into a whole new land that you have never been there before, but you feel this kinship there. You feel like, wow, like, how did I not know about this? That is an amazing feeling when you are being intentional and being purpose-driven. You're reading purpose-driven information that's going to help expand your skill set and the things that matter to you. You're diving into associating with those people who've done things that matter to you, that you believe are impactful. And now that you've read it and you have learned about these people, now these people are a part of you. That if somebody else walks up to you or you have a conversation with someone and they start talking about something that is relative to what you just read, because you read that information with intention, with the purpose of associating, you're now going to be able to communicate. I mean, as if you know these people, right? You're going to be able to talk about somebody's work, someone's life, as if you have known them for a long time, because you were intentional in your reading to associate with that person, that place, that situation, and personalized it. Say, man, like if I was there, what would I have done? Or man, how can I try to duplicate, if you will, or create what was done there in that time period in today's situation? I'll tell you just one example on that. I recently became board chair for the Baltimore Civic Fund, which essentially is the mayor's nonprofit organization to do more like public-private partnerships, philanthropy and business who want to support the advancement of Baltimore from the mayor's perspective. So what are the mayor's, annual budget, the priorities, how can the business and philanthropic community get involved and partner to help advance those situations? And it's so interesting because in this, the past couple of months or so, just having ongoing conversations with the administration, with folks who are interested in also and doing their own unique work to build a business or do different things in Baltimore. And to be able to have associated, and I'm speaking personally, to have associated with other folks or have read information or have had, a relationship with folks who are in other cities and other markets who are doing it in a way that is meaningful and impactful in that location. I just remember so many times in past conversations just thinking, man, what if we were able to do something like that in Baltimore? What if we were able, someone talks about a great situation or a powerful resource that they were able to access that benefited so many people and that kind of thing. And I'm just thinking to myself, what if we were able to do that in Baltimore? How would we do it? This, that. And so the brain's and this is years of associating with other folks. And then you finally in a situation where you can ultimately make something like that happen. And then just the level of, confidence and that it can happen. Why am I confident that it can happen? Because I've seen it happen in other markets. I've had in-depth conversations and participated in practice in other situations, in other markets, other cities, watched it happen and said, if it could happen there, it can happen here. Just that level of confidence around a situation, around what's real and what's not real. I could have easily have had those same conversations with folks or gone to a conference, listened to a little bit of the presentation and then went off and got something to eat, or, just be there, but not there. But going back to this conversation around being purpose-driven in your activities, when you're there to get something, and you can go from one meeting to the next and, I didn't get it in that one. And I'm not sure what was going on in that one, but I didn't get what I was looking for. Let me go to the next one. And you go to the next one and you know what you're looking for. But regardless, you're gathering the data, you're gathering the information. And when you're purpose-driven and intentional and willing all at the same time, that stuff becomes a part of you, and you can utilize it in those moments where you didn't think you'd have an opportunity to utilize it. And so there is value in making what society says is important secondary, not making that the main thing, even though that thing could be staring you in the face like, if you don't hurry up and pay this bill or or whatever, you know, somebody else wants to become a priority for you. If it ain't lined up with what you've told yourself you have committed to God that you're here to do, it ain't the main thing. The main thing is continuing to double down in your willingness to advance your purpose, your objective, to take it from where it is to where you want it to be. How do you see it in your mind? How do you feel about the potential of it becoming real? Like that is just wanted to kind of have a refresher again on what it means to be purpose driven and the process of doing that. And then taking a look at who's in your life and what you're listening to and what you're reading, and is it helpful? There's a lot like, folks who are preparing for a marathon. There are certain things that you just need to do to prepare. If you're going to make it, you can go out there and get started and go a mile or two because you've done a mile or two before. But once you get to mile 3 and then mile 4, your body, your mind says, I've never done this. I don't know how to help from this point on. You about to die. Like, all of those things pop up, like your body's like, no, we're not prepared for this. The same applies in this fact. When you're working toward a goal that is, you truly want to see it happen in your life, but you haven't done the necessary work to be prepared when that thing lands in your lap. Because there are some people who are just so powerful in their aura, in their spirit, that they can attract what they want into their life. The question is, what are you going to do when you get it? When it's sitting in your lap and now everybody's looking at you, you're the one. What are you going to do when you get it? Do you have what's necessary in your mind? Do you have what's necessary in your spirit? Are you physically able to take that resource, that whatever, that baton that has now been laid into your hand? Can you take it to the objective and can you land there? Can you fulfill what you see in your mind? And I will tell you, I have a lot of conversations with folks who will say, man, I just really want to be rich. It's like, wow, okay, rich. What does that mean? No, I gotta be wealthy. Okay, perfect. Why is that? Why? Because I need it. I mean, I can't be poor. Okay, where we getting somewhere? You don't want to be poor. Why don't you want to be poor? Because I need to be able to buy stuff. Okay, great. Get somewhere. Why do you need to buy stuff? Like, just really keep getting to the core of what's really going on here. I don't know if you guys, most of you on the call, most of you know that I'm a Marvel nerd. and I was just like, we're kind of in this period, right, where it's like, all right, where are we going with Marvel? But something yesterday told me to turn on the second season of Loki. And I was watching just maybe like the last 3 episodes. And for anybody who knows Loki, the god of mischief, and he was, burdened with glorious purpose, just wants to be a king, and so he's just hell or damnation, I'm going to be king kind of thing. And when he got to the point where he had to really unpack that, like, why do you want this? And he's going after, I'm trying to save the universe and all these things. Why are you doing it? Because they're going to take over. Why does that matter to you? Because I want to make sure to keep my friends. Why does that matter? Because I don't want to be alone. Boom. And it was like the whole lineage of the stories of Loki at that moment. you could unpack this orphaned, this orphan boy who was captured by the rival nation, if you will, and now he's at the next point of his life, and he's like, I just don't want to be alone. I don't really have a family. Never had it. Like, we got to get to what is our core reason? What is our core reason for doing what we do? What is it? Like, why are we wired this way? We can outline what we're trying to work on and what we're, the whole nine, but why is that your thing? And at the end of the day, what are you really trying to accomplish here? Unpack, put yourself on the why test, the why question. Ask yourself why 7 times and go there. Ask yourself 7 times, keep diving into what's really going on and what's your inner motivation. And I would say do it for yourself, because there are times when things are just going to be difficult. It's just going to be hard. And if you do not have a clarity of your why, you could easily succumb to that difficult situation. I don't know any other way to explain it. I'm going to pause there. Anybody have any questions or comments, again, just on this, especially if you're on for the first time and you're like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't know this was what this call was about. I thought this was like a networking event. I have a business and I'd like to talk about it. Please do. I would love for you to talk about your business and let us know what, what you're working on and how we could potentially be of support of that business or nonprofit or ministry or whatever it is that you're working on. Please do. But I think it is important that you know that this organization and particularly this group, it has just dedicated ourselves to personal development and that evolution, and whatever those activities that we're involved in, the goal is to apply that to that business, that organization, the ministry, and whatever it is that we've identified as purpose-driven activity for us. So we will take a second, open up the call now to anybody have any questions, comments, or want to talk a little bit about what they're working on and how we can participate. We'll open up the call now. And also for our folks who are online, please feel free to go into the comments. If you're not live with us on the call, please feel free to go into the comments and share what you're working on, and we will follow up as well. So I posted on yesterday the topic for this call being authentic self. And, it's so interesting when we think about it and how, as we're preparing for these calls, how we land on a topic for us to focus on. And I'll tell you, like, every week whatever's going on that week, I'll find something, a theme of that week, and I'll save it. And I'll go through that week and find a theme and save it. Find a theme and save it. And it was interesting that of each week's, opportunities and challenges, that I experienced this over the past month, I would say it culminated to authentic self, and I've had situations this month where actually the first week after our last call was able to go back to Tuskegee with the family for the first night game in Tuskegee's history. 144 years, which I would say for some people, like, y'all celebrating a night game? Well, for us, that's a big deal because we've never had lights. And all of our football games were in the daytime, right? So we're a small school, rural Alabama. So it was a big deal. So a lot of alumni, I mean, it was like a little mini homecoming. So many folks came, and just in Tuskegee during the night game. And I also, while I was there, was able to, I may have shared this on the last call because I think it happened right around that time. My old boss, I used to work when I was in Tuskegee for the Tuskegee Human and Civil Rights Museum, which was the museum that housed the syphilis study, all the occurrences and the lawsuits and that whole story of the Tuskegee syphilis study. And Attorney Fred Gray, who was the attorney for Rosa Parks and Dr. King, and really kind of the attorney for the civil rights movement, it's his museum. And he's still living. He's 93 years old and in Tuskegee. His daughter, Deborah Gray, was my boss, and she ran the day-to-day operations of the museum. And she recently passed away, and so was able to go back and just kind of connect with the family and go back to the museum and reconnect in a way that really, for me and for the purposes of this call, tapped into something personal for me from a purpose-driven perspective. There's every day I'm always looking for my pastor Watson, who's passed away now, would always say, "Lord, how are you going to blow my mind today?" And every day I kind of wake up with that expectation of, how are you going to blow my mind? How are you going to help make this life experience much more clear today, especially as it relates to purpose-driven work and doing things that are in line with my spirit and what I believe I'm here to do. And, it's just, that was just going back there and being able to see the opportunities, see the challenges, and then feel empowered to do something about it. And so that was a very valuable experience of going back and showing Maddie and Maria, this is where I used to work. This is what we used to do. I was a student here. This is who I met, this person and that person. And and how a lot of the things that I learned there just really, I would say, pushed me into, I moved to Baltimore to say, yes, you're here as a financial professional to learn how to become a better financial professional, but you're also here to go to work. You're here to go to work in this city. You're here to identify the challenges and apply what you understand, your interests, and go to work on those areas in the best ways that you know how. And to look at your community work and your professional work, all with a trajectory. You want to grow and advance professionally, and you want to grow and advance in your ability to learn more about ways to support the community, particularly those folks who don't have the resources or the understanding to help themselves. And so you got to have a thesis on this, right? What is your thesis for your work? And I learned a lot of that at the Tuskegee, well, now it's called the Tuskegee History Center, because they now, in addition to the syphilis study, they also house the story of the Tuskegee Native Americans. They also house the story of the city of Tuskegee, not the university, but just the city of Tuskegee, the history of it, all in one museum. And so I am, I walked away from there just like sad that I didn't get a chance to have a conversation with Deborah, and that she wasn't there, and to talk about how much she meant to me and in this community work and what I learned. during that time, but also empowered to say, what do I do with this sad energy? How do I make this worth it for what she labored in over the years? How do I, repay her for that? And one of the brothers from who worked there at the time, who was a board member at the time, I should say, he reached out to me and said, listen, man, we need you. And I'm like, no, I need you. And so we're going to work together to help take this to the next level. And it gave me another reason to just double down on, Tuskegee, a place that I love. Most, if you know me, you know I love Tuskegee. So I'm excited about that work. So that was that, and I will just tell you this, when we double down with our clients and when we go to work and we just commit ourselves to our work and our businesses and our profession, and situations happen with our clients, we feel it too. We are in that, we're all in. And I've had multiple clients this month who are dealing with some of the worst situations that you could ever think in business and personally. And so it's one of those situations where a lot of things were lining up in terms of, Byron, this is your time to dump what you know and understand on situations that need it. And in good situations, bad situations, developing situations, like all of that. And for me, whenever there's something that I believe is purpose driven, I believe it's work that is building the kingdom. And so it's kingdom work. So when you start doing kingdom work, somebody don't like that. And the enemy will do everything possible to say, no, come on back. I know how to hurt you. So let me start hurting you. And I had just, oh my Lord. I will say this. I think that it's people are like, Lord, why am I being tested? Why am I going through this and this and that? You don't know what you have until you're tested. Until you are tested, you don't know how strong you are. You don't know who you are really until you are tested. And I will say I was tested this week and the past couple of weeks. And it's one of those cases that, you can say what you want to say about me. But if you mess with my girls, with my wife, my daughter, either of the two, or collectively, then you're about to see it, right? And I was in that situation the past, say, 2 weeks. And, it's funny because when I had this conversation with some of my boys, like my friends, they're like, all right, so we about to roll up. Like, let's go. I'm like, and it's so interesting because, like, as a man who is want to get to heaven, that's number one. So let's put that out there. So that's number one. But number two, why do we even, let's just think about this for a second, because I talked to a lot of my guys about this. What's the purpose of being responsible? If you're a husband, got a family, why should we do that? Why not just, say whatever? I don't care about being a good husband. I don't care about being a good dad. I don't care about going to work today. Like, why? We got options. We could do one or the other. We could say, I'm going to work hard at being a good husband, good dad, good, provider, all of that. Or you can say, to heck with all that. I'm just going to do what I want to do every day. There are things that I want to do, and I'm going to do that. That's the way I'm going to live my life. You got the option to do one or the other. And so I ask myself, when I go through challenges, it's like, why not just cuss this dude out? How about that? Why not just do that? why not just go slap him in the face and say, and what? Like, why not just do that? And I'm just thankful to still have that spirit on the inside that says, because you're here for the plight and the advancement of Black people. So don't make everybody look bad. Don't make my grandmama look bad. Don't make my mama look bad. And be an example. And I had to have some very grown man conversations with a dad and his wife, and say, listen, this is it's important to stay to make sure that all of the things that we have worked on, and this if personal development is only real when you test it, and that was the past 2 weeks have been those tested moments, and I was just like, listen, God, I'm passing this over to you. You handle it from here. And what I gained from that was the test allowed me to see my authentic self. And one of my clients and mentors as well, it's always good. I got a couple of clients who are also mentors. That's a blessing. I told him, you got to write a book that says this, but he talks about being his unapologetic, authentic self. And when you are that, you are not running away in your current life. You're not running away from who you were in the first 20 years of your life. Matter of fact, you dive deep and go gather all of that up and infuse it together with this person that you are currently today and the person that you are purpose-driven, headed toward. So you go dig up, that 0 to 20-year-old Byron, bring him here, rub them all into who I am today, and then you look toward where you're going, and all of you go together. And it's important to highlight that because a lot of times we see people from a success perspective who only take who they are now to the future. And they completely disregard, downplay, in some cases act like it never existed, that early self. And so as we're trying to connect with our authentic self, and why is that valuable? Because the important part to this is that if you meet somebody today, all they know is the person they're looking at. They're staring at who you present that day, and they'll just take that person and go. But so it's really for you to feel comfortable in your own skin in any room that you find yourself in, to be able to feel very uniquely powerful because you've taken all of you with you, where you can be in one conversation talking about the future of America and advancement of our country, and in the next conversation you're given very detailed personal examples of who you are, where you came from, and how that person, that 8-year-old self, is speaking to you in your current self to say, make the right decisions for me. Make the right decisions for me and my boys and my friends and my classmates. Remember us and speak authentically from that 8-year-old you to the person you are now. And then both of you collectively look to the future and say, we're coming. We are coming, because we see you as someone who's doing the ideal work that we're here to do in this life. And so I say all that to say, if it wasn't for having that thought process, carrying this 8-year-old me and looking toward, the 70-year-old me, how I handle a situation today could very well change. You could have got these hands, like easily, like you could have got these hands, you could have got all kind of crazy things out of my mouth, but that's not the objective. And so the objective is, I love the word advancement. I say it a lot. I love the word advancement. It actually makes me feel good to say it. I don't care what we're talking about. It's like, we could be talking about the advancement of the food that we eat in this house, like whatever. When I say the word advancement, it just automatically feels like, man, we're going somewhere. Like this is about to be good. Like, watch this happen. Like, what I'm saying? It's a good word to use to make a point to someone that what am I about? What am I trying to do here? And it's about advancement. Now, the question then becomes, well, your definition of advancement and mine are two different. And you know what's interesting? And we actually haven't, collectively as a country, we're having this type of conversation ever since Charlie Kirk was killed. Because, and I remember I didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was, so I found myself like 2 days after he was killed, going back and forth with a white friend about Charlie Kirk. And I was watching it. I was like, man, we're really building up against each other on this. I'm like, I don't know this dude. Like, what about, I don't know him. I don't even know, like, I never watched him in action. Right. And so I'm not about to get into arguments over somebody I don't even know. Right. And so, but the conversation, especially when you get past the surface, like when you really start unpacking, like, what was his objective? His objective, if he used the word advancement, is it the same as my advancement? And I was in a situation the other day, and I I had to be very clear as to what advancement meant in this situation, this was with an organization. It's like, can we all just agree that we want to make sure that a person born in this country or any country, a person born in this today has an equal opportunity to advance? Can we agree on that? Is that something that everybody in the room can agree on? That we want a person born, whether they speak English or they speak whatever, they're black, they're white, Hispanic, whatever. That kid was born today in this country, and I'm just speaking about America right now, but in this country, that we want that kid to have an equal opportunity to advance, to have access to opportunity, education, food, just to advance, to be a healthy, productive person. Can we all agree? And if that is the beginning of the before we talk about any policy or anything like that, great. Because if we can do that, now we can talk. if we can't agree on that, just as a baseline, what we're here trying to do, then when, this isn't the group who's trying to make decisions. This is a group who is trying to rewrite something else or write something else, but it's not about the advancement of any child who comes into this life, and so we have to kind of have our baseline ethics, our baseline objective of what we're trying to do, like what matters to us and why. Where do we begin the conversation? And then we can start into, centrist, liberal, conservative, MAGA, whatever. We can morph into those worlds. But when we get so far in the different strands, can we all say, well, we all really did say that we wanted the advancement for a newborn into this country to happen. And that should at least bring us back to a place where we can begin the conversation again and start fresh and say, okay, does this policy support that? Right. So that's that. I really wanted to just kind of share that with you guys in terms of take your authentic self with you everywhere you go. And if you don't think you're there or you know who that is or what that is, take time to reconnect with the younger you, the adolescent you, definitely the you before 20, and do it in phases. I would say go all the way back to that. When you're like under 5, it's hard for you to understand anything, but between 5 and 10, there's a person in there that was starting to get it and understanding what's happening. I just chose 8. I can remember when I was 8, and what was happening when I was 8. Because, my sisters are older than me, so I can remember a lot because of them. And I can remember because I knew what was happening in their life. And then that helped me back into, well, what was I doing at that time, But at 8, I was seeing my sisters go off to college. So boom. This education thing is something that I better get into, so because they're doing it, and I better get into that, and so that's a good person to talk to at 8 years old. And I was 8, in the 80s. And so it's just one of those kind of things where we can go back, connect, and hear from that person to help us not just make decisions based on the surface of today. Because listen, everybody has pet peeves, and I give you mine. I just can't. I can't just have a surface level conversation with somebody, especially when somebody's real passionate about something and they just wallowing in the surface. I'm like, why are you so passionate about this? And you haven't even opened the book yet. All you're doing is looking at the headline and you are going crazy about the headline. You hadn't even read the article. I mean, and you haven't read the article yet. You are fired up and ready to, blow somebody up because of a headline. So let's get into what's actually happening and what's your understanding of what's happening, or do you just feel a certain way about the headline? So that's a pet peeve of mine. I gotta, we have to be more than just surface level people. And doing that and being able to communicate with your past self and your future self will always keep you above the surface. well, at least as a baseline, will always keep you above the surface. And I just think that we're just living in a time where we can't afford to be surface. We cannot afford to just let people say something and then we all just collectively believe it's true. I'll tell you, and then we'll open up the call for anybody any questions or comments on this. folks, if you are linked with me on Facebook, over the years, I've always welcomed the dialogue of folks who believe differently on any topic, whether it be politics, religion, race, parenting, marriage, any of that stuff, business. If you see a different viewpoint, let's talk about it. And because I'm always trying to figure out if somebody has a different viewpoint than me, is their viewpoint surface, or is there some depth in there? And just as a point to that, after I realized I didn't know who Charlie Kirk was and everybody was going crazy, I was like, okay, let me go listen. And somebody sent me, somebody who was, I think it was a brother, it was a black guy who sent me a post in support of Charlie Kirk. And so it was like this, it was at some form. And if you don't know, Charlie Kirk would go to these schools or any kind of big forum and just take questions from anybody. Say, hey, ask anything you want, I'm gonna give you my viewpoint. And I think the name is the Turning Point, a Viewpoint, his organization, something like that. But guy came to the mic, was a blatant, unapologetic, white hooded racist, right? So he gets the mic, and he's like, we don't even need, I don't think we need any other race here. And it was like, what's the purpose? And so he's, and Charlie Kirk's like, oh, this is a layup. And he threw at him. They were doing it from a scripture perspective, which is always that kind of stuff makes me real nervous when I hear like core racists use scripture. Like that kind of stuff makes me nervous. But they were using scripture and trying to go back and forth. And Charlie could shut this dude down so quick. It was so fast. And so that's being passed around. And I was like, okay, great. That was a layup for Charlie Kirk, because you have to understand the agendas of those two people. I mean, this guy blatantly told Charlie Kirk that my agenda is the white-only nation. That's his agenda. He made it clear. That's his agenda. Charlie Kirk's agenda is to advance, use that term again, to advance the conservative movement, which is wide open. You want Black people in that conservative movement, you want Hispanics in that conservative movement. Now, and anybody else who wants to adopt that, that way, that ideology, if you will, but more of a political ideology, which there's a lot of, the thing is, when you talk about conservatives, there's a lot of like scripture woven into that. And again, even when I have conversations with a lot of my Black friends and pastors, you just say the word scripture and they're like, I'm in, count me in. That's where I am, It's like, if he talking scripture, I'm with him, and I'm like, oh my Lord, like, again, get past the surface. Yes, he's talking scripture, but scripture that's going to send you into welfare. Scripture that's going to end all your rights. Scripture that's going to end everything, get you back to slavery. So it's like you have to get past the surface to get to where what the conversation is really about. And again, I just think that we're just at a point in time where we cannot afford to be surface. And on top of that, we're at a point in time but we need people to lead with their authentic self, to know what that is for you so you can communicate to surface-driven people what it is to be a purpose-driven person, and we got to have rooms like this to have these types of conversations, because as soon as we hang up from this, we're going to get into our world and associate with folks who see the world differently than you. And again, we're not here to convince people to think the way you think. What you are here to do, though, is to sow seeds. And the sow seeds is, let me tell you my situation. And let me tell you my thought process. and then you leave it there. There's no back and forth. Like, I heard you, you heard me. We've invested in each other. You sowed a seed on my side, I sowed a seed on yours, and we walk away. Because what happens with seeds is they grow. Seeds on fertile ground can grow and become something. Seeds on surface grounds cannot grow, right? And so it's not worth even having a surface level conversation, because you can't sow a seed in the surface. You can't just throw a seed on the ground, especially on concrete, and expect anything to grow out of that. But if you're having an in-depth conversation beyond the surface, somebody who sees the world completely differently than you, then that's a place not to try to convince them of the way you feel and the way in your beliefs, but to sow a seed that will ultimately become something. Because at the end, at least it becomes a proper articulation of your viewpoint, versus they're the enemy, the way Trump and his people say, well, they're the enemy. Like, so whatever, I hate those people because they don't see the world the way I see it. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, right? And so we have to be above that. All right, I'm done. Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts, observations? What's been happening with you? If you had a situation where you've been trying to navigate, these waters, this is a unique time, but it requires people who are about that life. So we'll open up the call now. My man, 50 grand. Brother Morris. How you feeling, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Hey, I feel better now. I got it all off my chest.
Hey, look, man. I've been going down. I've been walking with you for the whole call, man, and the whole road that we took. At a certain point, I've been flipping because I was like, damn, man, I should have had my notepads out, man, because I normally like to take the notes and get it right, but I was kind of just chilling, moving around.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of mental notes, but they're gone. But here's the way we'll go back to it, right? If I'm, we're going selfishly, right? So flip it to my side, right? See how you made me feel, right? How the call made me feel.
Okay.
And when we started out, you gave me the basics, right? So this is a little test of myself, right? You may not always remember what somebody said, but you can remember how they made you feel, right? So I try to approach things from the standpoint of, feeling and the vibration. That's kind of one of my, little hacks. Like, I can say anything, almost anything to somebody, but if I say it in the right way and I give it the right energy, they'll receive it the way it's meant to be, the way it's meant to be received, right? Based on the feeling. So anyway, so you started off, you were living in the basics, right? And you were talking about peeling back the wild onion, right? So I'm sitting there listening to the wild onion, and then you hit me with the Loki, right? Living in the wild onion. I haven't gone, you forgot about that. You so far in Charlie. You went from Charles from Loki to this. We've been on it. I could tell you needed it. I'm like, yeah, he needs it. He needs it.
Yeah.
I needed it too.
I need it. Yeah.
But I haven't lived in the wild onion in a second, or just approached it the way I should to when you're doing something and how you feel or if you have, in my estimation, it's best when you have like that question or a decision to make, and you're kind of wobbling on it. And then it's a good time to pull it out. Like, all right, let's just go to the why and see why.
Yeah.
When stuff is easy to do, hey man, I'm getting ready to grab a bite. All right, boom, what we gonna have? All right, man, chicken. All right, and you're on it, but when you're not quite on it, you say, all right, I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
You know, what's going on here? Let's just reset. Let's get everything. You know, let's just do that. Let's do that. Let's go to the basics. Let's go to the basic books. You know, you're far out. You know what I'm saying? You're deep into the Alex Hormozis of the world, and you're figuring out this. And you know what? Let's just go back to the magic of believing and just live in some 1939. You know, just basic personal development and just go there, right? And live in the basics. So when you start bringing up the basics, I was thinking, and there was something that I had uncovered in my studies that I hadn't seen before, that I was like, interesting. It was that extra power of the power of dissatisfaction. Because this goes to, you know, after you flip into, not flip, but I live in a space now, I have been, you know, I would say, I said it to, when I talked to Dwayne, I was like, yo, man, I think I had a baby midlife crisis, man. He started laughing, I started laughing, and I said over. And I said it to a couple other people, not because I was questioning if I had or not. I wanted to see if I was reflecting it to other people. Like, you know, hey, man, I think it's like being fat. Say, man, I think I put a couple pounds on. And then you look at them, you know?
Yeah. They're like, yeah, you have, yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, man, you look good, man. What you talking about? He's like, okay, all right, you know, but emotionally, you know, it's easy physically. That's a great, you know, it's easy, but emotionally, and when you're interacting with people, you know, you can't always tell. You can't always tell, but you're not always aware. So sometimes it's good to reflect on other people and see, you know, am I projecting what I think I'm projecting? Because you got to live on the planet with people, right? So you want to make sure you're, you know, reflecting what you want to reflect. You don't want to be misrepresenting yourself, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm like, man, I think I'm so I said that in a couple places, and nobody really gave me any good, like, oh yeah, you've been tripping, man. You know, you're angry, you're surly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're saying no a lot. Your jokes aren't cool, or they more disrespectful, or whatever it is. Nobody said anything like that. So I took it back, and I said, all right, well, I got to go inside. And as I was searching, like I said, I found that the power of dissatisfaction piece, right? And it's dangerous because it's like the beginning of you know, the depression and all that kind of stuff, right? Because you start to land in dissatisfaction, and then you live there for too long, and you become, you know, sad, depressed, down on yourself because you live in the dissatisfaction. But if you can jump into it and harness it, same way you were talking about, you know, getting right with that anger. You know what I'm saying? Getting right with that dissatisfaction, harnessing it, and kind of stamping it up there as the line in the sand, if you will. And then moving forward off of it, it's a huge boost to your vibration, to your energy. It is. But it's not something that you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying, hey, go be down. You get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a piece of it that I found in my beginning, I don't even know this is the time. I'm about to butcher this. I know you got real doctors on behind. I'm about to destroy the concept of this thing. But this is the way I took it in, right? Like kind of like pre well, that's what I make up a term.
Go for it.
Pre-depressive state, right? You know what I'm saying? Like so you're kind of right there, like,
yeah.
And then you stop it. You have to stop it. You stop it, you acknowledge it, or I did. I stopped it, I acknowledged it, and I internalized it, and then use that as a fuel to move forward. And then on the other side of it, it's like this relief, like you feel like, yeah, I'm on this thing. You know, it's like the push over, and it kind of kickstarts a lot of stuff for you to be able to get. Well, for me, to be able to get some things done, to get some clarity on direction, and to overcome some of the like I was talking about the last call, some of the fears about things that have to be done, that you don't do, or vaccination. So just be like, yeah, and go, right?
Yeah.
But not to live there, just to kind of be there, right? So I located that, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. But I'm gonna actively try to, like I'm gonna focusly do it, meaning that I'm gonna pick some things that I definitely dissatisfied about, and live there for a second and go, like specific things, not just be generally dissatisfied and all that, because then I think that's the danger zone. So specific things I'm happy about. So did that, but I'm kind of not the way you were going, because in doing that, I went back to the that kind of 0 to 20 guy, right? That you were talking about, and we talk about, what I'm saying, that the 16-year-old guy, right? Let me tell you, 0 to 8, 0 to 12, 0 to 12. For whatever reason, I've been back in that zone, like not quite my reliving my Tuskegee thing, but like not the college thing, but like that the elementary kid, and like, why is he like that? Why is he, and when you talk about, when you were saying bringing your authentic self to whatever, I was like, God, there's another piece to that, is that when you visit that guy or that person, then you have to bring the healed version of that person with you. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not toting around that maniac. He doesn't get to go. Doesn't count. But to be 50 and revisit that person, help him, and then bring the healed version of him with him, and his hopes and his dreams and his innocence and his thing forward is the move. It's the move. And so I've been practicing that. I guess subconsciously, until you said it, I didn't realize that I had been doing it for the past, couple weeks. But last thing, example. So when I was in the 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. When I was in 8th grade, I was a veteran. I was going to play, right? I was the star of a play. Or one of the stars. I was the villain, right? And in 6th grade, I was in a play. I was in the cast. 7th grade, I was in a play. I had a couple parts. So by the 8th grade, I had become the man, right? So I'm in there. So I'm the play. And the play was Oliver. Look it up. Oliver Twist, right?
Yeah.
It's a musical.
Yeah.
So I was the villain, right? And I had, and what they did was they gave us this cassette tape. On the first day we went there, and the cassette tape had all the songs on it, because you had to learn the songs, right? So I get the cassette tape, I take it home, I listen to the thing, all over and over again. I did this before I even they gave us the script and stuff, but I didn't know who I was playing at first. Week 1, they give you the thing, so I listened to all of it. I wanted to be one of the other characters who didn't, because I didn't realize I wasn't as important. But I wanted to be that guy. I thought it was cool. I didn't want to be the villain. So then the next week they tell me I'm going to be the villain. Well, I listened to this thing over and over and over the tape. I said, I'm going to get this thing right, because I didn't want to this is my last shot in 8th grade. Wound up doing it, and then they have like these auditions, if you will. So I get up there, they start playing the song, right? And I sing. I give my English version of this guy's song. Bill's like, and hey man, I kept, let's give myself some credit. I do my thing. I got
okay.
And the lyrics, I'm saying, I'm EO with mine, the whole thing. And because it wasn't like the scene, you just had to stand up there and sing the song. And that was the last part of the audition. And obviously you had to sit the physical bill, right? So I was a little taller, so I wasn't going to be able to play the main kid. He had to be short. He was supposed to be a kid, and we were supposed to be adults.
Got it.
Okay, so bottom line is, I went, the lady stands up, she's like, she was a hard lady, Miss Tyson. Anyway, she's like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what real acting is. She talked to all the people in the say, right? All that to say, a great feeling. One of the great feelings of my eighth grade year, other than the performance. But that audition was important to me, right? So I went back, and thank you, Steve Jobs and Apple. That whole tape that I had is on Apple Music. So let me look up Oliver real quick and see, right? I've been banging that. You'd have thought Jay-Z just dropped a new CD, a new album.
Wow.
I've been banging Oliver all through the car.
Okay.
I've been banging it and living in that vibration, living in that particular time period.
Yeah.
For a lot more than you would think.
Yeah.
Than you would think somebody. You pull up like, what is this brother? This brother. I'm cranking. I'm enjoying myself. And when I'm saying that to say, trying to go back, and I guess you articulated it, going back, living, picking those spaces and then bringing that part of you for that particular person who I had forgot about. Really, I mean, it comes up here now, but like really to live in it and really, reconnect with that little guy, that young man has been, important. And then I wound up going to a it's called I don't know why I'm having a brain fart right now. Just some night.
Okay.
So I popped in at the back end. I was done with everything. I said, let me slide by here and see if I can get in. And seeing the people and interacting with people, I already have a good, I'm already pretty good at interacting with people, right?
Yeah.
Something I've been working on, but I was kind of testing out some things, like, seeing how I felt. You're going to see old people you haven't seen in a while. You're going to see this, you're going to see that. How do you feel? Like, who are you bringing to these interactions? Are you really, like, I was conscious of it. Like, who am I really, come on, how do you feel about this? Why do you care? Like, I'm thinking about going, I'm like, why do you care so much about this? You're going to go see Drew. Okay, well, I missed that part of it anyway. I was late. So it's not like I was going for the performance, and I wasn't going for it. It was like, in my mind, as I was preparing, possibly during the day, I was thinking about all the people I might see and all that. And I'm like, why? Why do you care about that? Why? These people don't. You got these goals. None of the things. It's not like you're going into a meeting with a bank or something like that, or you're talking to making a presentation with clients. But it's not that. This is people who you may or may not have, who you haven't seen, and you know what I'm saying? Like, why? Why do you care about that? I'm asking myself this. But then I realize now, after hearing our conversation today, it was the blending of bringing that kid in. That kid was with me. So he's like, I want to see what's his name. We play football with. I'd love to see him, tell him what's up. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that guy, man, hey, man, I wonder how he's doing, And you care more because I was bringing that smaller person with me. So once I kind of condensed all that in and arrived, now things went, what it was. I saw a lot of people, and that kind of thing. But it's not what I did, it was how I felt about what was happening. And bringing that authentic person is key, but I noticed that in doing that, other things happened in between. I mean, the other age bracket is in there that requires healing and assistance to bring, like you were saying, that authentic in. I got to work with that second layer guy to make sure that he's good. So as I bring him in, so like I say, 8 to 13 was great. You know what I'm saying? 15 to 20, I'm gonna go in and work on that. I'm work on that kid and get him right. And then 25 to 30, I'm still fairly familiar with him, but I'm gonna work on him next. But yeah, I'm just interesting that you brought it up from that side. And as far as Charlie goes, guy goes, man, I don't know what y'all are talking about, man. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I got opinions. And the fact we care, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
We talk about that another time. That part right there is the most important part for me.
Yeah.
That part.
Hey, I'm glad you broke it down that way, because I want to, as we start talking about this authentic self piece, I want to just kind of talk through why we should do it. And because you said something that made me really think about this, because there are some people who will say, Dees, there's a reason why I don't go back there. You know, it's like, Dees, I hear you, but there's a reason why I don't go back to my first 20 years. And because they try to shield from, it could be trauma, it could be all kinds of stuff, right? And I think it's important, and especially in that example that we were talking about the other day, or I should say earlier, about some people who just, they completely, like, they take their success of today and just run with that, and could very well not even mention, you know, where they were from and who their parents were and all that stuff, because they're running from something. I think that it's, and you mentioned, you said, I want to bring the healed version, you know, into the conversation. And I think that the part that what we're really trying to do is to associate with that person. I like the way you did it, though, because you went to a moment that in your youth, that where you felt was a high point in your life at that time. And you can take that kid, because, you know, there was a reason why that was a high point in your life at 13. You know, there were other things that hadn't given you that kind of, you know, positive feeling at that stage of your life, you know, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with just picking that kid and saying, I'm bringing him with me, because that kid still has all the other stuff that you don't want to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but you can reflect on the Oliver experience. You can let that, you can play that song, you can play, like, you can have that, and when you're doing that over and over and over again, listen to that music, remember, you are infusing your early self into your current self as you're preparing for your future self. And so that in and of itself is a good way to do it. But I wanted to just unpack, because it could be people on here listening who are saying, yo, I'm not trying to do that. Like, I'm not trying to go back and listen and reconnect with that younger me, because my younger me was in fear. My younger me was in pain. My younger me was in, like, and they may just have all of these negative experiences. I like the fact in your case, you pointed to a moment of success that was like, made you feel a certain way. That, and you know, that is definitely a great way to do it. If there could be somebody to say, I didn't have no successful moments in my early years, you know, so my point in that example is to look, let's just say your whole first 20 years was just horrible. I would still say, go back and get that kid and find and remember what that kid wanted. You know, so what were the hopes, the dreams, you know, and we should even say faith, because for anyone who can say the first 20 years of my life was horrible, what that means is you attached yourself to faith and overcame that, got past that period. You stayed focused on the thing you were hoping for, and faith is on the other side of hope. You know, so it's like, you know, that's what the whole definition, right? So it's like, I'm hoping for something. And it's one thing for me to hope, but faith is going to pull me through hope and pull me into the future. And so I would say to that person, what were you hoping for? Even in that, in those, during that time period, during those adolescent early years. And reconnect with that person relative to the hope, because the reality was bad. So, because again, what you want to do is just to bring that person here to today. And the benefit of bringing that person here today is it helps. And I'm just going to say it I've been talking about don't be surface, but I'm going to say this in a very surface way. It helps you to not be a sellout, like to not sell out who you really are. And you're always wearing a mask, so it's like, if you bring your authentic self there, like for instance, there's a difference between yourself and your authentic self, right? Like when people are like, what do you mean? I bring myself all the time. You bring your representative. I gave you, I know I've talked about this on this call before at some point, but I was sharing this with somebody else recently. I remember when I first moved to Baltimore, and my first month on the job, I believe, I was working in private banking in the city, and we had to give a presentation on. I was working in private banking, but most of that job was really, helping private bankers get loans for their clients, and so we had to do like credit, break down a credit presentation and types of different credit and lines of credit and loans, and just break all that down. And I had worked on this presentation, gave the presentation in front of a group of folks and my peers who are also in that like that first year associate level. And I felt good. I came back, and the lady who was in charge of the program, she was like, "Hey, you seem pretty confident. Things, sounds like you were, on point. But personally, I just didn't understand a word you were saying." And I'm like, "What?" She was like, "Yeah, I mean, maybe it's your Southern drawl. I don't know, but I couldn't really understand what you were saying." And I was, out fresh out of Tuskegee, from Florida, like, okay, yeah, I'm from the South, right? You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, I mean, do I sound? I'm like, I know people who have deep Southern drawl. I'm like, do I sound like that? And it was my first month in corporate America. And my mind said, okay, you can't go out like that. You got to get this right. You can't just be Ryan talking and people don't know what you're saying. Like, listen to yourself, man. Listen to yourself. And so now I'm trying to fix it. I'm like, get it right. Get your diction together. Like, man, what my mama said, she heard it. All that, all this stuff in my head. And then I never forget, I came home, I don't know, maybe for Christmas or something like that. And I saw this girl I used to date. And she was like, "You sound different." And I was like, dang, I sound different. Like, what I'm saying? And in my mind, I'm sitting like, I know why I sound different. Because I'm trying to be professional. I'm trying to advance. Yeah, go back to this word, I'm trying to advance in corporate America. And I can't be down here like trying to sound like y'all or what. And it was happening. It was happening. I was making excuses. Who knows what that lady's real objective was when she said that to me? I mean, she could have easily been doing it just to, like, he shouldn't even be in this room in the first place. When you go there, you're the only Black person in the room. I mean, it's not a lot of us when you get in those rooms, right? And so it's like, I'm just thinking now, there's so many ways she could have said that to a young, fresh, starting, she could have been like, she's like, yeah, I mean, she could have, who knows? But the way it was said and the way I received it was, you country bumpkin, you're not going to last long in corporate America until you fix that. And so, so how old was I then? That was 20 years ago. So I was 21 years ago. So I was like 25 years old, 24 years old. And so it was just like a solid 20 years of, all right, you gotta set the sound professional. You got to get that bokeh out of your draw. Like, you got to, you know what I'm saying? And then I heard my mentor talk about the authentic self. And I should say, this man, when you listen to his voice, he sounds like you're watching Eyes on the Prize, from the civil rights movement. Like, so, so here's somebody who didn't try to fix it up. You know what I'm saying? It was like, I'm from the South and this was coming out. And it's like, and it was so interesting because like, I actually found myself, in more recent years, longing to hear people from the South who were like the educators and successful people, whether it's successful in business or successful in whatever, in your profession, longing to hear their voice, because what it proved was that you can be from another place, sound a different way, but still be successful. You don't have to become something else to be successful. You can be authentically you and still rise to the heights of success in your profession. And that was the beginning of and then I heard him give this authentic self presentation. I was just like, I'm sold. And so moving back to Florida has helped that in a lot of ways, because down here I sound like this guy from the Mid-Atlantic or mainly this professional dude, and they're like, so it's like it is that kind of dynamic that happens, but still feeling like, okay, but I'm in the dirt down here. This is where it all began, and still moving around. So it's just, it's just one of those kind of things where, as we're trying to get closer to removing the mask and being truly who you are from a foundation perspective, because I think about a lot of different ways of trying to. I basically go through like an internal audit of myself to say, is that a mask or is that you? And even when I'm having conversations in business or clients or whatever, I'll try to. I go through that process of saying, is this a mask or is this you? Who are you giving people, and why? And even after I've had a conversation or a first meeting or something like that, and I think about it afterwards, and I'll grade myself, like, did you give them your authentic self, or did they get, the company you used to work for, or all that kind of stuff, and so this is a real ongoing, real-time thing. And I should say this because we're getting close to 9:00, but I just finished reading. I put it actually in the comments section. I just finished reading The Black Family That Built America, the story of the McKissicks. And the McKissicks, most of you who've ever gone to the African American Smithsonian in DC, that building was built by McKissick and McKissick. And so that kind of gives you kind of a reference point as to who they are. But the company in and of itself is a 200-year-old company. Well, the business was built before emancipation. And it's an awesome book. I mean, it's a great book on so many levels, but that book dealt with a lot of what we're talking about in terms of authentic self and leading with your authentic self. in markets, in situations where there's already the stereotype of who you are anyway, right? And so to be able to lead with who you really are and still be, about the advancement of whatever it is you're working on, and competent enough to lead and implement, because that's one thing, I just remember, like, as a kid, you always had those those people who could talk a big game. Like, oh man, if just on the surface, when you listen to them, like, I know they can do this, like this person, that, like, whatever they were trying to do, because it could talk themselves into anything, but then it was time for it to happen and they weren't about it, right? So, like, as a people, like, at this day and age that we're living in, we have to be more than talkers. We have to be very competent in how we lead and execute, how we build, how we attract, how we create, and how we implement. And I would say I would highly recommend you reading that book, The Black Family That Built America: The Story of the McKissicks, because they're builders. And it gives you a historical sketch all the way up to real-time projects that are still got dirt moving around right now, of what it means to be your authentic self, to lead with your authentic self, and to execute with competence. And we can apply that to all of our lives and what we're working on and what we're doing, and be intentional around what does it mean what does success mean on a daily basis, and I just want to, and the other thing I know we talked a lot about the authentic self, but I would say maybe a subscript to that is I really want everybody to walk away from this call today to not be afraid of a test. To not be afraid of a test. To not be afraid to go through bad things. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants bad. Nobody's trying to attract bad things. But when the bad thing happens, to know that two things are in your favor. One, that if you've been working on this personal development thing consistently, it will show up for you. And two, that when what you know and understand has been depleted in a bad situation, that you still have a God who can get you through it. Like that, those two things. And I can tell you, this week, I was in a situation where I said, okay, God, this one's yours, because I don't have anything else to give. I've reached my capacity of my knowledge and my energy to address this issue. So I now give it to you. This one is yours. And then you leave it and you go. And to be as confident in that relationship, just as confident as you know your name. And the challenge is there are a lot of people who are confident in what they know and understand, but it ends there. They don't have a deeper spiritual relationship to say there's something beyond what I know. There's something beyond what I can even comprehend that's stepping in to address my calamity, And so I recommend tapping into that spiritual self that will be there for you now and beyond. And because I can tell you right now, if you don't have that, you will give up. when something bad happens, you will give up or go crazy. One or the other. You're gonna either give up or go crazy. It's one or the other, man. I mean, I don't even know any other way to say it. And so, it's a valuable piece of this life to be able to work hard on yourself, stay committed to the stuff that matter to you, family, business, community, whatever. Stay committed to that, always sharpening your sword to get better. But to have this daily communicative relationship with a higher power that reinforces your faith in good and definitely in bad times. And I've seen it happen on both sides where a lot of cool stuff was happening, but because you were so rooted in the faith that people were looking at you to say, man, you should be like much more fired up about this or whatever, and you're still at a level of peace, even in very good times, knowing that you're celebrating on the inside, but it's so valuable. And I'm trying to look for other words to say that really can explain how good it is to have that kind of source of power to access when things get bad. Simple as that. Simple as that. So with that, let's open up the call. Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts on the topic today of authentic self? And anything to share along that, we'll open up the call now. All right. Well, listen, check this out, man. I also got another book. I haven't opened it yet. It just got here yesterday. I got it on pre-order about a couple months ago. And it is The Apprenticeship That Saved My Life by Senator Corey McCray, Baltimore's own Senator Corey McCray. The Apprenticeship That Saved My Life by Baltimore's own Senator Corey McCray. Very excited for this brother. His story is something that everybody should hear. And we talk about these different levels of success. A lot of times people think that the road to success is a straight line and anybody can kind of tell you how they got there. Oh yeah, so you must have, like if you're in Baltimore, you can say, oh, you must have went to Poly, and oh, you must have went to, a black college, or you must, and all these different layers that somebody just kind of, narrated how you got to become successful. Well, his story is definitely not that, right? And so he definitely went through took a different path to success, and I'm so excited for this brother to have documented his story. I think about it, particularly with him, we have a lot of people throughout the years, particularly Black Americans, who have attained certain levels of success. They didn't document their story. And so the only way they were great during that time is through somebody else who's telling their story. They didn't document it. So you had to find somebody who would tell the story of how the work that they did and why they were great in the whole nine. And what he's done here is, and I hope this is the beginning of other books, has documented his story. And especially when you talk about working class and folks who didn't go straight off to college, and what are my options? How can I navigate this? Maybe I got a criminal record before I turned 20. what are my options if I still want to try to advance. I hadn't read one page of this book, but I know his story, and it's a powerful story. And he's a powerful legislator in the state of Maryland. And he takes this with him. Here's a brother who probably never heard the authentic self conversation, but he brings his authentic self into his work, and then you can't get past his deep Baltimore draw as well. So, but yeah, so The Apprenticeship That Saved My Life by Senator Corey McCray. Check it out. Get it on Amazon. I got mine from Amazon. Came here yesterday. I know he's doing some tours, and I think he's going to be at the Enoch Pratt sometime soon library. So check it out, get the book, and enjoy it. All right, folks, it's 9:00, 9:02. My Seminoles playing tonight. Florida State versus Miami, so getting ready for that. And man, just be blessed, man. Literally, just, if you guys have any questions or comments, just want to wrap offline, go to the website and let's schedule a time. Let's sit down and talk it through. Dreammakersnetwork.org. We can schedule time. We can talk through anything on the personal development, business, community, whole nine, man. We got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of cool people in the network who are doing cool things. And so if I can't personally do something, we can access someone in the network who can. And that's it. Have a great, great weekend and have a powerful month. We'll see you soon.